There are mistakes that do not destroy our lives, but they rewrite the way we live, not loudly, not with an immediate collapse. Everything continues as usual. We still go to work, we still talk and laugh, we still live our daily routines like before. Only one thing begins to change: we speak less, we trust more slowly, and we are rarely as carefree as we once were. Not because life suddenly became harder, not because we suddenly became wiser, but because there were moments, choices, times we trusted, loved, and stayed, that made us pay a price deep enough to change us. No one calls them turning points, but when we look back long enough, those mistakes that once seemed small, quietly shape the way we live afterward. In truth, very few people trust the wrong person, because they lack understanding, or awareness. Most misplaced trust begins with something very ordinary: familiarity, knowing someone for a long time, talking often, sharing many things, and quietly thinking, "This person wouldn't let me down." At that point, trust is not a carefully weighed decision, it becomes a reflex, trusting because of familiarity, trusting without feeling the need to be cautious, trusting because the possibility that the other person might choose themselves has never truly crossed the mind. There is a story like this. Someone goes into business with an old friend. They have known each other for years, shared countless meals, talked endlessly about the future. When they start working together, there is no clear contract, no detailed control, not because they do not understand the risks, but because they think, "We know each other." Doing that feels unnecessary. At first, everything seems fine: work moves forward, money comes in, trust feels intact, until a problem appears, and then one thing becomes clear: when things go well, everyone seems kind. Only when interests collide, does a person reveal what they truly choose. Things fall apart quickly. The money is no longer enough, no one wants responsibility, and the greatest loss is not the money that disappears, but the trust that will never return. After that, this person lives differently. They no longer trust words easily, they no longer begin anything based on feeling alone, they no longer place full trust in someone, just because they are familiar. In work, everything must be clear from the start. In relationships, there must always be a healthy distance. In life, there must always be a way out. Some people see them as cold, some say they have changed, but the person living it knows the truth. They are not colder than before, they are simply no longer naive. This mistake takes away something beautiful, the innocence of trusting someone freely. But in return, it gives something else, something only those who have paid the price possess: the ability to observe and protect themselves, knowing that not everyone you know for a long time is trustworthy, not everyone who speaks well keeps their word, and that trust, if it exists, must be built through repeated actions over time, not through initial emotion. After this mistake, many people no longer live the same way. They trust more slowly, they choose people more carefully, and they understand this: misplaced trust may not destroy a life immediately, but it will inevitably change the way one lives afterward. Not everyone who loves deeply is wrong, and the issue is not about loving too much or too little. The real issue is this: many people love with an innocent belief that sincerity will always be met with kindness, and that belief makes them forget boundaries. They give up personal space, they fail to prepare for the reality that the other person may not be like them. There is a familiar story like this. Someone stays in a long-term relationship, not impulsive love, but love. With intention, love built carefully, they give the better parts of themselves, they carry the heavier weight, even when they are hurt, they tell themselves, maybe the other person is just under pressure. But then the signs begin to repeat, promises sound good, but actions do not follow, arguments end with one person staying silent, while the other chooses to look away, and the most painful part is this: the one who loves more, is always the one who changes first. When it finally ends, they don't just lose a relationship, they lose a version of themselves, the version that believed, if I love wholeheartedly, I will be treated with care. From that point on, the way they live changes, they no longer enter love at the same speed, they no longer go all in from the beginning, they no longer reveal everything in the first few months, they no longer allow someone to enter their inner world too quickly, not because they no longer love, but because they have learned a cold truth: what hurts most is not the breakup itself, but realizing that you placed the wrong person in a position that mattered too much. This mistake has a clear dark side. Many people become guarded to the point of closing off. They fear attachment, they fear promises, they even fear the feeling of connection itself. Some become so aware that they no longer allow themselves to be soft, but the brighter side cannot be denied. They learn to keep boundaries, they learn to love without sacrificing dignity, they understand that love is not a place to prove how much pain one can endure, and most importantly, they understand that loving deeply is not wrong, it simply means that from now on, they will love deeply, with someone who truly deserves it. And once this is understood, people move on to the next mistake. One just as quiet, but one that slowly kills time even more. Some mistakes don't hurt immediately, they wear you down, they erode enthusiasm, they drain energy, they slowly erase the belief that another kind of life is possible, and the most dangerous part is this: as the erosion happens, people don't notice. There is a very ordinary story like this. Someone stays in the same job for many years, not because the job is terrible, it simply no longer fits. Every day, they still show up, they still get things done, they are still fine. But that fine is no longer stability, it is stagnation. They keep telling themselves, after this phase, I'll decide. That phase passes, another phase appears, sometimes it's family. Sometimes it's finances, sometimes it's the fear of starting over, and just like that, years go by. The strange thing is, no one forces them to stay, they stay by choice, all because of one short sentence: it's familiar. Until one day, they look back and realize, they can't remember the last time they felt excited. From that point on, the way they live changes. They begin to fear the phrase later. They start seeing time as something limited. They begin to seriously ask, is the life I'm living every day actually worth it? After moving past this mistake, many people change visibly. They no longer see leaving as failure, they see it as self-rescue. The dark side is regret, regret for lost time, lost opportunities, lost versions of themselves that could have been stronger, freer. But the bright side is a lesson about time. No one gives you back the years you sacrificed because you were afraid to change. After that, people become more decisive. Not because they become reckless, but because they understand that staying too long is sometimes the greatest risk of all, and from the story of staying, people often slide into another mistake, one where they suffer quietly, while believing they are being kind. Some people live by a very familiar rule: just endure it so things stay peaceful. It sounds mature, but if enduring means growing pressure inside, it is no longer maturity, it is self-inflicted pain, in silence. There is a story like this: someone in the family is always the one who endures. When there is conflict, they step back first. When there is an argument, they lower their voice first. They tell themselves, if I endure, things will calm down. And when they step into society, they carry that habit with them. At work, they hesitate to say no. They hesitate to refuse. They hesitate to ask for what they deserve, because they fear judgment. At first, everything seems to flow, but over time, one thing becomes very clear. Others begin to treat their endurance as something expected, not because people become cruel, but because humans have a very real habit: what does not resist, gets pushed back little by little, until one day, this person realizes, they are living, with a feeling that says, with or without me, it doesn't really matter. That is when they understand, they have endured too much. From that point on, the way they live changes. They begin to speak more clearly. They no longer swallow words. When they are hurt, they no longer smile things away. When they are disrespected, and most importantly, they stop using silence to buy a false sense of peace. At this stage, many people fear they are becoming hard, but it is not hardness. It is the beginning of boundaries. The dark side is that they may lose a few relationships, they may lose some fake pleasantness, and they may be told they have changed, but the bright side is, they keep themselves, because if you do not respect yourself, no one else has the time to do it for you. And when people begin to have boundaries, they often realize one more thing: acting immediately is not always right, because decisions born from emotion often come with a very high price. There is an uncomfortable truth: strong emotions often create a sense of clarity. But that clarity is false. Anger makes us think we are rational. Sadness makes us think we understand life. Despair makes us believe we have seen the truth. And when decisions are made, in those exact moments, the price is rarely small. There is a very real story like this. Someone goes through a prolonged period of work pressure, not for a day, but for weeks, pushed, pressed, criticized, burdened with expectations. Exhausted to the point that waking up in the morning only brings the desire to turn off the alarm and disappear. One day, someone says something deeply unpleasant, not the harshest words of a lifetime, but they land at the exact moment when this person is empty, and they do what many people have done before: they say, I quit. In that moment, they feel light. Light, as if a weight has been lifted, but days later, reality appears: money, plans, responsibilities, and the question arises: did I quit because this wasn't right for me, or because I was burned out? After that moment, the way they live changes. They begin to learn a vital life skill: not making decisions when emotions are at their peak. They practice stopping, sleeping on things, before responding, waiting until the heat passes, before speaking, because they understand this: the frightening thing is not emotion itself, but decisions born from emotion. The dark side is that they lost something because of haste. An opportunity, a relationship, a path. But the bright side is, they gain a kind of strength, the ability to control the rhythm of their life, instead of being dragged along by it, and when people learn to control their rhythm, they begin to examine another mistake, one that drains them completely, while making them believe they are still on the right path. Many people grow up with a beautiful belief: just keep pushing, and you will get there. That belief is not wrong, but if one thing is missing, it turns into a trap. Direction, effort without direction, is like running at full speed in heavy fog. There is a story many people recognize. Someone works relentlessly, no complaints, no rest. They do whatever is assigned. They work at night. They work on weekends. From the outside, everyone praises them as hardworking, but inside, they begin to feel empty. Because they don't know where they are actually running. Years pass, and they don't reach what they believed they would reach, not because they are lazy, not because they lack ability, but because they poured their energy into things that did not lead to their goal. When exhaustion finally arrives, they realize something painful: they sacrificed too much for a path that may not even be their own. After this mistake, the way they live changes. They begin to ask questions before charging forward. Where does this lead? If I continue for 6 more months, what do I gain? If I keep going, what is the cost? They learn to adjust, instead of pushing blindly. From that point on, their effort becomes less, but far more effective. The dark side is that they may lose a long stretch of time by moving in the wrong direction. The bright side is that they gain a survival mindset. Strength is not about pushing harder, but about knowing where to push. And once they learn that, many people fall into an opposite mistake: not pushing too much, but fearing too much, fearing to the point they no longer dare to step forward. There is a type of mistake that is very quiet: no explosion, no tears, no one to blame, only time passing, and opportunities passing along with it. And at some point, people realize they did not fail, but they also never truly lived. There is a story like this. Someone has a chance to change direction. It could be changing jobs. It could be starting a project. It could be ending a relationship that is no longer right. They think carefully. They consider every risk. They imagine every possible worst case, and in the end, they choose, let it be, for safety. Years later, they are still okay. But okay does not mean fulfilled inside them. One question keeps returning: what if I had tried that day? After this mistake, life changes in 2 possible ways. Some become even more afraid, as regret erodes their confidence, but others awaken. The truly frightening thing is not making mistakes, but living an entire life inside the words, what if? From that point on, they begin to try, quietly, carefully, one step at a time. The dark side: it may take them years to learn this lesson. The bright side: they begin to take responsibility for their own lives. And then, whether one dares to try or not, there is still one final mistake people often fall into: the mistake of believing that time will take care of it, when in reality, time only reveals what was avoided. Avoiding confrontation is always easier in the short term. It brings a sense of calm, a sense of, let it be. But the problem does not disappear, it only sinks deeper, and one day, it returns, in another form. There is a very real story, like this. Someone was hurt, in a past relationship. They never spoke about it, never processed it, never learned to understand how that experience had changed them. They simply moved on, stayed busy, worked harder, to forget, but when they enter a new relationship, old reactions surface. They become suspicious, defensive, afraid of attachment. The new person cannot understand why they are treated as if they have done something wrong, when they have done nothing at all, and only then does this person realize old wounds do not heal on their own. They are merely covered by time. After this mistake, the way they live changes. They begin to face things, not to complain, but to understand, to explain themselves to themselves. And when they do that, they finally feel light, truly light, not because time passed, but because they stopped running away. The dark side, avoidance, causes people to repeat the same mistakes for a very long time. The bright side, once people dare to face things, they begin to live with awareness. And if we look closely enough, one truth becomes clear: not every mistake destroys a life, but almost every mistake leaves a mark, and that mark is the way we live today. If we look back long enough, one truth becomes clear: not every mistake destroys a life, but almost every mistake leaves a mark. That mark is not on records, not on faces. It lives in the way we move through our days. We trust more slowly, we choose people more carefully, we keep more distance, and we rarely give ourselves completely to something the way we once did, not because we have grown cold, but because we have learned the cost of misplaced trust. Loving the wrong person, staying in the wrong place. We may no longer be as carefree as before, but in return, we live with greater awareness in every choice we make. And if there is one thing worth keeping after all those mistakes, it is not regret, it is clarity, so that we do not repeat the same mistake in a different form.